So we're on Parsha Vayetze, page 173, and in intro 174, 15 begins the actual Torah reading. And we're continuing the story of Jacob. So last week we looked at Jacob's taking the blessings and the tension he had with Esau, and we explored their personalities a little and why the story had to unfold the way it did. This week is a very interesting parsha and unique in the whole entire Torah. We are accustomed to dividing Torah into two general ways. The parsha, right? So each week is a parsha, and then there's chapters and verses, right? Which the chapters actually were not divided, it seems, by a Jewish person. It was a Christian or a publishing house that broke up these chapters. It's not original to the text at all. Even the vision of parshas that we have is not organic to the Torah text. The Talmud tells us that there were different systems of Torah reading. In Israel, they would finish a cycle of Torah reading every 3 years. So they would have had much shorter parshas each week. And so they wanted to create a weekly cycle and divide it into these portions. But if you open a Torah text in the scroll, there's no division of these portions. Right. There is division of 5 books. There's a big gap between each of the 5 books. And there's also a division of paragraphs. Okay? And there's 2 styles of paragraph. One is just a small gap and then continues. One actually, the whole rest of the line is empty. And in a Chumash, you'll see it's indicated by a pei and a samach. The different, and that's the original, if you go back to the original term in the Talmud of Parsha, it refers to these paragraphs. These are the parshas. 1 second. Come in. Hey, Ben, come in. Hi. Come on in.
I'm late.
No, you're good. You're perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Or is it?
This first over here. So these paragraphs are the only kind of organic breaks in the text. We almost gloss over them when you look at a Chumash, but if you look, most pages you'll find after the verse a little pei or a little samach. The reason I'm looking backwards is because this parasha is unique in that there are no paragraph breaks in the whole parasha.
I mean like that? No.
That's the chapter?
That's just the chapter.
Yeah. Let's look down page 90. Page 90, the third line, you'll see a samach there.
I'm sorry, samach means?
Samach means a paragraph break. See a big letter in the middle of the third line, there's a letter there. No vowels.
Is that like isn't that an S or a T? No.
That letter, yeah, a samach.
Samach.
That's one kind of paragraph break, and other times you'll find the letter pei. It's just the middle between the verses. And those are the paragraph breaks in the actual Torah text. If you open a scroll, you'll see small little empty spaces of words. Vayetze, this week's Torah reading, is the only parsha in the whole entire Torah that has no paragraph breaks in the middle. And there are different suggestions why that might be. But what I think it indicates is that this parsha is one long continuation. It's not like multiple stories weave together. There's like no break here. It's one long story that has to be seen as a whole. There's a chumash right there, Ben, if you want. We're on page 174, the parsha. So I'm going to go through the narrative, the storyline of the parsha, and then we're going to look at, like we always do, one idea that to hone in on and to focus on. So the parsha tells us, it picks up where last week left off. Jacob, his brother Esau wants to kill him for stealing his blessings. Rebecca notices this and tells Isaac, let's get Jacob out of here. And he tells Jacob, you should go, leave town, and go to my family in Haran. Isaac tells him, and go find a wife for yourself and until things settle down here, cool off with Esau. So Jacob goes and he heads towards his family. On the way there, we're told, Vayifka b'makom, he suddenly falls into a certain place. He literally meets a place. And he finds himself, puts himself to sleep with rocks around his head. He has a vision, a dream, he sees angels going up and down a ladder, and a vision from God who says, I'm going to be with you. And he realized that this is a holy place. Turns out this was the place the temple was going to be, Temple Mount, place where Isaac, his father, was offered as a sacrifice. And so this is a very special place, and he prays to God there.
So it's on a mountain. It's up the hill. That's where he is.
Mount Moriah, yeah.
Where does it say that? No, it says.
So if we look at, so 175, verse number.
No way. Mount Moriah. Oh, it says on the way he came to the place, Mount Moriah.
It's commentary. And same thing on page on the next page in verse 17. He said, 16. It said, I realized the holy place, the awesome place, none other than the house of God. So what are the house of God refer to? The future home of God. Like what is the house of God?
What ties it to where Isaac's?
Oh, where Isaac was buried? We know that Isaac, the altar was on Mount Moriah, which is where it's going to be eventually the Temple Mount. And we're told also that's where Adam was originally formed from, the earth. So that mountain was, sort of the symbolism, the significance of where the biggest moments of history, Jewish history, happened. So he's there and he has this vision from God, his dream. He wakes up and he's, wow, I didn't realize how holy this place was. He offers a sacrifice to God. And he calls it Bethel, the house of God. And he promises God, if you're with me, I will offer an offering to you. Meaning he's making this deal with God, be with me in this mission I'm going, wherever I'm going. Then he continues on his journey and he goes to the city he's intending to, Haran. And we know this narrative repeats itself. He goes to the well. That's where they meet the girls. That's where people hang out in those days. And eventually he meets Rachel coming to get water for the sheep. And he sees that before that he asks people there, where's Lavan? Lavan, my uncle? And they say, sure. And they tell him, actually, Rachel, his daughter's coming right now. Oh, what do you know? And he sees Rachel and he likes her. And eventually he goes back to her home and Lavan welcomes him in, his relative, and says, here, hang out with me for a little bit. And after a while, he's helping Lavan, working for him, staying with him. Lavan says, what's your deal? What can I offer you? Says, I will work for you if you give me your daughter, Rachel, as a wife. I want to marry her. Says, sure, here's the deal. 7 years of work, if you work with me for 7 years, Rachel's yours.
Why did you choose 7?
Why 7?
Yeah.
Good question. I think they come to
Also,
discuss why 7.
Why did Yaakov have the stones around his head?
So the stories around his head, I'll get to that. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to that story in a second. I don't know why I chose 7, and the number 7 will come up a few times because 7. Then after, I'll tell you, I'll mention it. So the commentary suggests a few things. It's a weird number. Why 7?
Throw that out. Yeah.
7 is kind of a cycle, right? 7 days
Right.
of the week,
Oh,
the
that's
7
true.
years in a Shemitah cycle. So
Right.
I think 7 is like, let's finish the cycle.
Okay. Makes sense.
So Yaakov works for 7 years, and the Torah tells us it was only felt like a few days in his head. He was so eager to marry Rachel. He's waiting for this moment. The 7 years pass by with ease, and then he has a wedding, and somehow he gets messed over. His uncle Lavan switches Rachel for Leah. He wakes up in the morning, and in bed with him, instead of being Rachel, it was Leah. And he is obviously taken aback. He goes to Lavan and says, what have you done to me? You gave me the wrong girl. And Lavan says, oh, but we are over here. We don't have the older go after the younger. First, the older girls get married, and Leah was older. And so Yaakov is obviously very distraught. He loved Rachel, he wanted to marry her. And he says, I want to marry Rachel also. He says, sure. Let's wait a week till the Sheva Brachas. You will marry Rachel as well, and then work for another 7 years to sort of earn that right of marriage. And Jacob goes ahead with this. And so he marries Rachel and stays for another 7 years. And we then read about all the children they have. Leah has children, and Rachel does not. And she has 4 boys, and then he marries Rachel. He also takes Rachel kind of children, and she's very distraught. Sister's having kids. She feels like the second wife that's not being blessed with children. She gives her maidservant to Yaakov. I want to build a family through her. And then she has 2 children. Leah's maidservant has 2 children. And finally, Rachel then blessed with 2 children of her own, Joseph and Benjamin. And so there's a lot to unpack here. And each child is named reflecting what's going on in their lives. Leah feels secondary. She feels hated by Jacob. She feels not appreciated. Jacob only wants to reach, not her. Every child that she gets born to her, she feels maybe now he'll love me.
Sad.
It's sad. It's tragic almost, right? And Rachel's feeling there's a lot of tension going on in the family. And then eventually we learn that Jacob feels time to go. 20 years is there. Lavan, I need to get out of here. And he makes this deal with Lavan how he's going to get paid. With the striped sheep will be mine. And each time he offers a very distinct sheep. Lavan's great deal is with no striped sheep here. Suddenly all the sheep are being born striped. And every time he offers his deal, and Hashem makes sure that he will be well compensated for all those years. And eventually, he runs away from Lavan, his father-in-law. Don't want to tell him he's leaving because he wouldn't let him leave. And the Lavan finds out eventually, obviously, and takes chase. And he's very upset, wants him back. And that story unfolds. And next week, Parsha picks up where he meets up again with his brother Esav, and they have this confrontation. So this whole narrative of 20 years of Yaakov's life is all one long continuation with so many details. It'd be impossible to discuss them all today. And it's a long Parsha. But so many of them are so fascinating and so much to dwell on. But I want to focus tonight on something which encompasses sort of this whole storyline. And that's the following. So before I do this, any questions on this story so far?
When they have the name, so I'm going to name him this because of such a reason. Is there anything that actually ties that word to the meaning of the words, or is it like Gad because of so and so? Does that actually tie to something specific, other than just the fact that it says that?
So most of them, the name actually is the word they want to indicate.
It is the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not always exactly, but
Right.
basically
There is a connection there, linguistic.
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
just curious about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Just what is a mandrake?
The flower?
Oh, it's a flower?
Yes. Which verse do you want?
Was that a good day?
14. Reuben,
Yes, that's a fascinating little sub story. Like again, there's so much to say. Where Leah and Rachel, you see again the competitiveness, right? In their husband Yaakov here. And Reuben comes with his flower he harvested. And some people say it's a jasmine, a mandrake. It's different, I guess, how exactly to translate this dudaim. And Rachel makes this trade that she'll give him her night with Yaakov for the flower from Reuben. And so you have a lot of undercurrents here. What's going on? Why is this happening? But we can't get into all of it. But there's definitely a lot of sub stories here that deserve attention. So I want to focus on a big picture here.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Why would Yaakov, I mean, I don't know if this is his fault, but why would he make Leah feel unwanted? You know, like, he's like such a great person. I mean, he didn't make her feel that, she felt that on her own, but like, why didn't he, give her as much attention as Rachel?
Good question. Very good question. It's not clear.
Okay.
2 things. Number one, it may be that he didn't do anything different, but Rachel had this, just felt this way. Felt this way. He knew that he wanted to marry Rachel all along, right? That was public knowledge. So she never felt comfortable. It does say that he loved Rachel more than her.
Okay.
But Yehav, it's Rachel, Milea.
Yeah.
But it only says she felt hated. It doesn't ever say that he hated her.
Right.
And it actually never says she hated. God saw that she hated. She felt uncomfortable with it for sure. So it's not clear exactly why she felt this way, whether
Right.
actually something going on or in her head she just felt
Okay.
sort of as an imposter in the marriage.
Yeah. Makes
Um,
sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Jacob, if you look at all the forefathers, Jacob had the hardest life. From beginning to end, he was non-stop struggling to sort of earn his right to be himself. Last week we saw he had to sort of battle with Esau for the blessing which he had already bought, the birthright. And then he had to run away from his family to be in a foreign place. And then he had to spend time with his uncle Laban, who fooled him again and again with his wife, almost didn't get a chance to marry the woman he loved. Then with his deserving a compensation package from Laban, he kept tricking him again and changing on him hundreds of times, just kept changing his salary to try to cheat him out of anything he's doing. And then we'll read on next week, he battles with Esau, his brother, has a confrontation, and then his daughter Dinah gets abducted and raped. And Joseph then gets lost for him for 20 years, he thinks he's dead. He had such a really terrible, tragic life. To the point where he eventually, he finds that Joseph's alive, and Jacob goes down to Egypt, and he meets Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And let's read, I want to read what he tells Pharaoh. Page.
Versus how old are you?
Yeah.
So the bold is the original text, right?
Yes, the bold translated into the text. Yeah.
Literally, if you just only read the bold, that is everything.
Yes, that's
And
the
everything else is interpolation.
Mhm. Page 291. 291, top of the page. This is from Parshas Vayigash. So Joseph, the viceroy, introduces his father Jacob to Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked Jacob, how many are the years of your life? How old are you? Jacob replied, I have been a sojourner. The years of my sojourning have been 130. The years of my life have been few and hard, have not equaled the happiness of my forefathers' lifetimes in the days of their sojourning. So what do you say? I've been alive 130 years, have been hard years. Right? This is sort of the self-awareness, self-acknowledgement of Jacob that my life has not been easy. To the point where the commentaries, in the Vayetze, the last parsha of Genesis, it says he lived for 17 years in Egypt. Those were the best years of his life. He finally had peace. So for 130 years, it's an incredibly long time, a lifetime, he is struggling. Yet, despite that, we don't find him ever complaining, ever giving up. We don't find him breaking.
Not just here.
Well, he kind of acknowledges this.
Yeah.
Doesn't he? Never once along the way said, "This is terrible. I went out of this."
Very resilient.
He's resilient. Not only that, he's incredibly successful, both materially, he has a lot of wealth. With his children, he has 13 children, the 12 tribes, and Dinah, who all turn out well. It's unheard of in the biblical stories. Abraham has Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael is off the path Abraham set for him. Isaac has Jacob and Esau. Esau is rebellious against his father and mother's path set for him. Jacob has 12 sons and a daughter, and all of them kind of follow his ways.
Well, some he curses at the end.
He definitely curses and reprimands them for their behavior,
Right.
but overall, they were on the path.
They represent the tribe. So.
They were the tribes of the Jews, right? Which is why we are called Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. We also are children of Abraham, but there's another line of the children of Abraham. But the children of Isaac, there's another line to that children. The children of Jacob encompasses the Jewish people.
Why Yisrael though?
Well, his name was changed to Yisrael.
Oh,
We'll get to next week.
okay.
Why his name was changed to Yisrael. So Jacob, in a certain sense, is more successful despite being on the run, the pressure. You would think who's going to be better educating their children? Abraham, who's living in a settled place. Isaac, who's living a settled life. They have everything going for them, and yet they still can't manage to bring their family together in one wholesome way. Jacob, under so much pressure, facing so much unknown, he's really in a dark place. yet he manages to find their goodness, succeed in that difficult times. What gave him that strength? And more importantly, I think, for us, the children of Jacob, what can we learn from him that can give us the strength, the resilience, the fortitude to be able to withstand challenge and find light in the darkness and push forward, be successful despite personal challenges and communal challenges? What can we learn from Jacob that can give us that fortitude?
That's a question.
Yeah, sure.
What's the difference? Is there a difference between the chorah, I guess, and the blessings?
So we discussed a little bit last week.
Mm-hmm.
What the Bechorah, what the firstborn right that he bought from Esau meant.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was maybe a financial gain, because the firstborn gets a double portion of the inheritance. Whether it was a status symbol where in the future they're going to serve in the temple, the firstborns. Whether it included the blessings and therefore he deserved them rightly or not, it's not clear. It is, I think, pretty much understood that it did include the blessings.
It did.
It did, which is why even though he had to sort of trick his father to get the blessings, eventually his father sort of, once he found out what he did wrong, what Jacob did, his father never went back on it. He said, okay, if it's done, it's done.
But doesn't Esau say like it's bad enough that he took my blessing, he took this too, so that sort of implies that they're two different things.
Well, Esau felt that he was tricked twice.
Right.
Whether that was reality or not is not clear, right? Esau felt this is the second time.
Right.
Jacob may have felt, well, wait, once I got you once,
Right.
this is just the natural, so it's not 100% clear.
Why did he get paid back 3 times?
Good question.
I know it's not this part.
Yeah. So
Take them off.
no, that's great.
I'm just really
So
curious.
the payback, we discussed last week why there's certain things that happened to him 2 weeks ago, right? Last week. There were a couple of things that happened to him and the Jewish people later as kind of a reaction, a consequence, a negative consequence for him stealing the blessings. Even if he did deserve them, he went about getting them in an unethical way. Whether he may have been the right thing to do. Sometimes you need to break that ethical code for a greater good. But he fooled his father, and he, at the moment where Isaac blessed him, those blessings weren't intended for him. Isaac thought he was blessing Esau. And so there was some kind of taking some deceit and taking something that wasn't entirely intended for him, even if he deserved it. And so he's not, overall, I think the narrative seems to suggest he did the right thing, right?
Yeah.
We're here today, right? The Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely think his shift of history was good, but there wasn't, something was amiss there. And there was some kind of fallout or pushback.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering why it was 3 times that he got paid back.
Right.
I could
Yeah, I
talk
don't
to you
know.
after about it maybe if you
Okay.
have, yeah.
Here's one more question.
Yeah, sure.
When that happens, if he just, two questions. If it's just one blessing, then sorry. First question is when he says gam, brachuti, what's the gam? If he's giving a blessing, one of them has the main blessing at least. Then what's the gam? What's like? If he got it, then he got it. Unless it's just the different use of the word gam. Like what is the?
Right. So you're asking what was the blessing which Esau was able to get on top of Jacob's blessing? So I don't want to get into it now because there's a lot of different ways to understand that whole story. The blessings that Jacob got were blessings for material success and sort of power. The spiritual blessings Jacob got later on after that. Isaac blessed him again with the spiritual blessing. So there's some commentaries that actually understand that Isaac knew he's giving Esau, I want to give Esau the material blessings and Jacob the spiritual blessings. Jacob sort of stole the material blessings too. But then Esau got some of the material blessings. When Jacob falters, you'll have success. So it's a lot to talk about what each one was blessed with and what intention was originally and how it worked out originally. I don't want to get too much into that now.
You said what can we learn? Sorry, I didn't mean to. You said what can we learn from Jacob? I think just his trust in God.
Trust in God. Okay, good. Where do you see trust in God?
Actually, I don't know.
No, so you're
I saw
suggesting
it somewhere, but I don't know where it is.
Okay, somewhere in the text here.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can kind of say the opposite in a way, where like God promises all this, and he says, so if you keep your promise, then like it implies mistrust.
Right, he kind of made a deal with God. If you keep your promise.
Yeah.
It is there. I saw that.
So it's interesting. There's also a couple ways to read that.
I saw that.
He had a
Um,
relationship with God despite his
Where is that?
struggles.
Where was that?
Yeah, page 176, 177. He vowed, verse 20 on 177. If God will with me, protect me, and will give me bread to eat, and then this stone will be a house of God. Yeah, so there seems to be like he was 100% convinced of this. But I want to look at the beginning of this story. The beginning of the story, I think, tells us something very, very beautiful about Jacob that we can learn from, and sets a tone for the whole Parsha that gives him the strength. He's traveling on this most difficult journey, leaving his family. Right? This is before cell phones and any form of communication. Doesn't know when he'll see them or if ever again. His brother is on the hunt to kill him, and he's going to a foreign place with no idea, no direction. His father had never left Israel. Isaac had never left Israel. Didn't even know how to guide him. My son Jacob, go. And he's here traveling. And we're told in the very second verse here, he came upon the place. Literally in Hebrew, Vayifka, he met the place. Rashi tells us that it means that kind of he wasn't even there. The place kind of moved. He was like shifted to meet this place suddenly. It wasn't almost automatic that he was going to be there. The term Vayifka, he came upon or he met, the Talmud says a very strange term. It didn't say he arrived there, or he camped there. The Talmud says it's actually a reference to prayer. And it's the third reference to prayer we have in Torah. Abraham says he prayed. When he got up early in the morning, the Talmud understands it means he prayed.
He was with the tent. There was the sun was rising.
Yes. Isaac, when Rebecca came and he says he went out to converse in the field, Talmud understand that to mean he prayed in the afternoon. And here we have Jacob praying. When's he praying? In the evening. The sun is setting, and that's when he prays.
Which words? He came upon the place.
Yeah, he came upon the place. What he came upon? So the Talmud says this is the origins of the Jewish 3 prayers a day.
Wait, what's the first again?
Abraham prayed in the morning,
Abraham,
Isaac prayed in the afternoon, and Jacob prayed in the evening. And so we have 3 forefathers, 3 prayers a day. Each one prayed at a different time of the day. Now, some commentaries say they all prayed all 3 prayers, but which one was more important to them. But what we have in Torah is each one prayed their own distinct prayer, morning, afternoon, evening, which became later the Jewish practice. The Talmud also offers another reason why 3 prayers a day, but this seems to be the roots of it. Right? The Muslims have 5 prayers a day. Some people would say let's pray once a day. Actually, it seems to be the sort of the mitzvah in Torah to pray is once a day. There's no mitzvah, there's no obligation from a biblical standpoint to pray 3 times a day. Perhaps not even once a day, maybe only when you need something. Or some understand the biblical obligation once a day. But because our forefathers prayed at 3 different times, we also pray at 3 different times. What's the significance of this prayer at different times of the day? Why do I need 3 times a day? And why did Abraham decide to pray in the morning, Isaac in the afternoon, and Jacob either? Were they just trying to be unique? Were they trying to be different to their father? Was it sort of just circumstantial and by random when they prayed? Then why do we learn prayer from them if there wasn't some sort of conscious intent to pray that time?
Is this prayer sometimes Jacob's prayer always associated with this dream, or is it sometimes associated with the wrestling in next week? I mean, that's also a nighttime interaction.
Yes, we don't find prayer there.
Right.
We don't find
it's a kind of a
expression of prayer.
conversation with the day with
With an angel,
holiness,
right?
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. But it's
Interesting.
Yeah.
You may tie into what we're gonna share.
Yeah, I mean, I remember what Rabbi Sachs said about that was like Abraham represents at the beginning. You know, it's morning, it's really the start, and he's the beginning of it. And Isaac is more of a static, kind of late, that afternoon, internal, and Jacob it's darker. It's the wrestling of night. It's the things that there's a little bit of darkness in his experience, and it's also dream-like. It's more vision, nighttime sort of experience.
Yeah. So I want to expand on that a little bit. Right? So let's look at our own daily routine. Like, why would we need to pray 3 times a day? So the simplest suggestion is, well, start your day on the right foot. Pray in the morning. Then as you get into the routine of the day, you gotta check in, make sure you're continuing that same path. And then before you go to bed, and as you wind down for the day, acknowledge, thank God, and finish the day on the right foot. Right? So it's like almost 3 times a day is a practical thing. But even within that very practical level, each of those prayers has a different feeling, right? The morning is you're opening up the day. You're beginning. You're trying to put yourself into the zone. The afternoon, you're just trying to maintain what you have. And then the evening, you're trying to, you're closing up. You're completing something. There's sort of like wholesomeness to it, where you're bringing it a full circle, which does represent the sort of historical placements of the 3 forefathers. As you just said, Abraham was the innovator. Abraham started something new. He recognized God. He preached this radical monotheism. He was the founder. He was the wild, countercultural radical. Isaac, we discussed this a couple weeks ago. Isaac was the sort of just maintaining Abraham's ideas. He was the stable ship that gave Abraham's legacy continuation. He was that manager that took the wild ideas of Abraham and built it into a sustainable model that can be perpetuated. And then Jacob somehow brings it a full circle. Jacob somehow brings it home in a way that now as the Jewish people, the 12 tribes, really begins, right? And so it kind of fits morning, afternoon, evening.
Why night for Jacob, though? I don't understand that.
So that's exactly what I want to know. Why night, right? What's significance of night in Jacob's life and in Jacob's role? So here's what I think. And this is not my own ideas. This is from a collection of different sources. But there's a verse in Tehillim, in Psalm, that says, Lahagid baboker chastecha, that we speak about God's kindness in the morning, ve'emunascha, and your faith, balayla, in the evening. And so it references when we speak to God in the morning, there's a sort of kindness to it, and in the evening is a sort of faith element to it. So what does that mean? And I think this is summing up what Abraham stood for versus Jacob.
What about the afternoon?
So it's not referenced in this verse. Yeah. A few weeks ago we spoke that in terms of the Zohar, of the Kabbalah, Abraham embodied chesed, kindness, and giving. Abraham had guests away, that he was a giver. And that goes together with being an innovator, someone who just pushes his own thinking onto the world, isn't taking in, but just giving and innovating and creating and a radical. Someone who's absolutely kind. They're not even taking into account what the person needs and doesn't need. No, nothing exists. They just want to give. They just want to give. That's Abraham. Isaac was the idea of discipline, right? Reining that in and taking into account the surroundings. What do we need here? And that's why he created a sustainable model, right? Yeah.
Was Isaac also wealthy like Abraham?
Yeah, he is.
Isaac's wealthy, but we actually don't know much about Isaac's life.
Okay.
Very little we known. We offered at the altar. sacrifice,
Yes.
buying Isaac. We know his children fought over the blessings at the end of his
Right.
life. In the middle of his life, we hear about digging some wells. About it.
That's saying he's wealthy though.
Yes,
Yeah.
he had wealth.
Just curious if Abraham was like a master manifester.
Well,
Because
Abraham
he was so
accumulated
giving.
wealth. Isaac would have just gotten from his father's wealth, right?
Oh,
Abraham
okay.
accumulated original wealth.
Okay.
Isaac
Mm,
was born into it.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
but he did get it from Abimelech. He had wealth.
Okay.
So where does faith come into Jacob's life? And that I think is what makes Jacob unique and why he prayed at nighttime. Before he's already in the middle of his life, but he's about to face the biggest challenge of his life, going to Lavan and being in a foreign environment. And not just foreign. Lavan was a bad person. He was someone who cheated over and over again. He was known for that. He's called Lavan Ha'arami, either from Aram, the place, or Lavan the Ramai, right? Lavan the cheater. He's
Unethical.
an unethical person. And Jacob was going to sort of plant himself into that world for a long time. And so he kind of feels darkness overcoming him. He was going to a world which the clarity, the moral clarity, the light was not present. And there's going to be confusion. There's going to be a lack of direction. He may not even sense God being there with him, right? It's dark. But he knew that in the place of darkness, I knew pray there as well. I knew find God there also.
Especially there, right?
Yes, but it's a harder place.
Right.
So the difference between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob wasn't just what time they prayed. It's where they found their relationship with God.
Mm.
Abraham, where did he find God? In the break of dawn, in the morning. The sun's shining. He saw this vision. He saw the light. Right? A few weeks ago we discussed he saw the palace with flames. Abraham saw a world and he saw the beauty of the world. He saw God's presence there. He recognized the Creator. And Abraham was sort of inspired by this vision. I want this and I want to preach this.
He saw potential.
So potential. So when was he inspired to pray? When the day breaks, when the sun's coming up, Abraham says, "This is where I see God. I see God in the dawn, in the sun rising. That's where I find God." Isaac, where did he find God? Where did he find meaning and fulfillment? Where did he find his calling and where it most spoke to him? This is a time where I need to reach out to God. Smack in the middle of the day. He said, in routine, that's where I see God. When things are just chugging along, when everything is settled, when we have everything how it needs to be in a very organized way, that's where I find God. So the morning is chaotic a little bit, right? The sun's rising, there's this overwhelming beauty. Isaac says, no, when the sun's in the middle of the sky, this stability, that's where I find God. That's where I'm inspired to pray. Jacob has something incredibly unique. What inspired him to pray? Where did he find God? Where did he find the courage or the inspiration to have his personal moment with God? When it started getting dark. Within the darkness. He says, that's where I see the need for faith. It's not a God that can be felt. Abraham's sort of overwhelmed by God, led him to pray. Isaac also overwhelmed by God, led him to pray. Jacob, there's no overwhelming presence of God there. If anything, a lack thereof. It was the faith that God is there despite not being apparent. That God is there even in the dark moments.
Well, it's in his dream now. I mean, it's a dream experience. It's sort of
Well,
that
before his dream.
Right.
He gets to the place and has his dream. So the term he arrived there, Vayetze, is the term connoting prayer. So the simple reading, at least in the Talmud, is that he prayed and then went to sleep and had this dream. You may be able to read it as well that the dream itself was the prayer, possibly. But the way I understand it, at least, is that the prayer he prayed and then went to sleep and had this vision. So Jacob is finding inspiration, is in the darkness, he's struggling with the struggle with attention. That's where he sees his relationship with God. Even at nighttime, even in the dark moments, to find the strength, the courage to call out to God.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It says here in the text on page 183,
Mhm.
Leah had a son named Shimon, and
Mm-hmm.
it says 2 sisters were born along with Shimon. Why were they not mentioned?
So this is from the Midrash. The Midrash says that each of the tribes of the boys born to Jacob had a twin sister born with him as well.
Okay.
And Shimon had 2 twin sisters. None of those are mentioned in the text. They're not in the simple reading of the Torah. The Midrash adds that in.
Okay.
Why? I don't know. Why it's not mentioned. But,
And Dina is mentioned.
sorry?
And Dina is mentioned. Probably
Dina's the only
because-
girl that's mentioned.
Because of that incident.
Also, she was born on her own, wasn't like a twin, sort of attached to one of the tribes.
Yeah, interesting.
But yes, she's an important part of the narrative also. So
Yeah.
When is Dina's birth?
when was Dina's birth?
Yeah.
Leah had 6 boys, and then she had a girl, Dina. Similar time when Joseph was born. After that, Rachel had her 2 children.
Do you know who's kidnapped?
Yeah. So yeah, she plays an important part of the story, which is why that she's mentioned, and none of the other sisters.
That's
So this also ties into what you were saying before, Jordan, where Jacob later sort of battles with the angel at nighttime. So again, it's Jacob is the struggle, he's battling and struggling at nighttime in darkness, but that's where he finds his strength.
I just want to go to where it's after the dream. He says, Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, God is truly present in this place, but I was not aware of it. And then there's the added commentary, had I known that this was a holy place, I would not have slept here. So in some ways that really, it doesn't quite jive with him sort of, I don't know, that's not quite reconciles with what you were just saying.
In what way?
Well, I mean, to say that he found that he went to this place, he prayed, and then what makes this place, in my reading, sort of a holy place, is that it's this place of connection with God in his sleep. That's something he doesn't really realize until he's asleep. Then he wakes up and goes, this is a very special place. It suggests that he was not intentional in picking that place or going to sleep there because he's surprised. Even the commentary backs that up.
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily read it as suggesting that he was intentional in praying at night in that place.
Well, maybe the opposite. I understand it. To him, he's in night, both literally and figuratively, in a dark place when he prays, and then he has this dream where he realizes actually there's incredible holiness in this place. I have a dream of God and angels and ladder in this place. So he at the time of prayer he didn't recognize. He thought he was in a very dark place where he's praying, and even despite that he prayed to God. And then he has his dream and realizing that there's incredible holiness there. And you can even go a step further and say, being able to pray in the darkness helps you realize that it wasn't darkness at all. It's a very holy place. Right? So the dream was sort of affected by his prayer. The fact that he was able to take a very dark place, his own understanding is in a dark place in his life and literally nighttime falling, and to pray to God in that moment, to have the courage to have faith in that moment, leads him to dream and realize it was never dark in the first place. This is a very holy place. He didn't have that understanding before he went to sleep. That makes sense? So I think that actually, sort of underscores this idea that Jacob had this ability to find faith in the darkness, to recognize that God's always there. And that actually it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you have that awareness, you come to see it as well. You come to see it a little differently. When you feel like a victim, you kind of invite that reality, you manifest that into your life, and you are a victim. But when you're able to, within the darkest moments, say, I have faith, I'm going to dig deep within myself and find this reservoir of faith, then it shifts your reality and you realize God's with me, right? the place that I'm in isn't so dark. This is a holy place. So he actually created that reality, that dream from the prayer in that darkness. Right? And he wakes up, what does he say? He says, if God will be with me.
What page are we on?
So on page 177.
Became afraid.
He says, if God will be with me and protect me physically in this journey that I'm undertaking, will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, protect me spiritually from all of evil, I will return to my father's house untainted by sin. So he says, he feels this strength down from God is going to bring him back to his father's house untainted. Meaning, I'm going to lion's den, I'm going to the darkest place, but this strength I'm having, I'm going to return safely. I'm not going to be affected by the surroundings. I'm going to have the kind of this armor around me that my faith is allowing me to remain wholesome even in a place of darkness, to have hope even when everything seems very grim.
And it's also fitting, he says that at night, before sleep, before a different experience is gonna happen, to strengthen him. So that fits with the time of day and all the mystery about sleep.
Yeah. Which sleep, which induces that dream, right, of the ladder of God appearing to him. So, with this sort of understanding, if we now look at what resonates most with us today, and different people, some people have Abraham people, and they have this incredible see potential and goodness, and everything's find God in that. I like people. But then the Jacob people, and I think we all to a degree Jacob people, the Jewish condition has been to live through darkness, been through the most incredible persecution and challenges, and Jews have remained faithful, have remained hopeful, right? It's this weird irony that the Jews can remain hopeful even through darker times. That's the Jewish condition, right? The Dalai Lama, we wanted to know how the Tibetans can in exile keep their identity. He came to the rabbis. He came to a group of rabbis, asked them, how can we keep our identity? Like, the Jews have managed to hold on despite the odds being stacked against them. And this is the character of Jacob. This is the prayer in the evening. And so the entire time at Lavan's house, I think this Parsha reads one long story. The beginning of the Parsha sets up the tone, the narrative, how he's able to overcome the challenges of the rest of the whole Parsha. So this is sort of a mood-setting introduction, which gives us the understanding of what kept Jacob going, what allowed him to have success despite adversity, what allowed him to maintain his own faith, his family, even though there was so much against them.
His parents?
Well, he left his parents, right?
Still that in there.
But he took it further than his parents, right? This prayer in the evening, he was the first one to do it. It's interesting. Little sidebar. The Talmud says that there's 3 prayers a day, but the first 2, the morning and afternoon, are mandatory. The evening prayer, reshut. It's permissible. You don't have to. Optional. Eventually became sort of the Jews accepted for themselves as being mandatory, became kind of part of the mandatory halacha practice. But originally it was kind of, if you want to pray in the evening, you can. Why? Why does Jacob's prayer get thrown under the bus? So perhaps this idea that could be that it's an incredibly difficult challenge, right? Not everyone's, I can't force you. I can say, recognize the good in your life, thank God. I can say, find in the middle of your day, stop what you're doing and recognize and tell God. Tell you in the darkest moments, you have to have faith. I can't force you, right? It's something which has to come from within. You have to really, there's nothing outside which is inspiring, it has to come from within. So it can't be forced. On the other hand, we can say, we'd rather not have that challenge, right? We don't want to have the night times. So to say part of a routine is when it's night, pray to God, they never wanted to institute that into the routine because we'd rather not have nighttime at all. And so that prayer nighttime was optional. Ultimately, when did the Jews, after the destruction of the temple, decided that we're going to make the evening service as part of our mandatory routine? So in the darkness of the exile, when Jews were going through so much challenge and darkness, they took upon themselves, this is our lot, this is our fate, and we have to build that resilience to have that prayer night there. So to sum up, I think this we can learn from Jacob is the idea of faith that's not being promoted because of a certain sort of proof or a certain positive idea which is pushing it, right? Well, I see this, therefore I know it's going to be good. It's even when you lose all hope, when there's so much darkness, when the sun is setting, when it's coming, this really oppressive darkness, that courage to have hope, that faith to say, I don't understand why, don't understand how, but yet I'm still going to believe God's with me. I'm still going to have a conversation with God. I'm going to reach out and have that relationship with prayer.
Well, this clinical depression,
Meaning?
like people who are seriously clinically depressed, you know, you can't really judge them and say like, oh, they don't have faith, you know?
We don't should judge anybody. This is,
I mean, you
again,
shouldn't judge anybody,
it's
but like,
aspirational, right?
yeah,
What we should be aspiring to.
yeah,
Yes, obviously, you have some people, they're you know, clinically or imbalances that they have to treat.
yeah, mental illness.
Yeah. But together with that can come faith as well, right? It's not either
Good,
or.
but, yeah,
It's
like
not-
you said, like, don't judge.
Oh, absolutely, no one should be judged ever.
Agreed.
But it's this is a uniquely, I think, Jewish idea, and Jacob introduced that, which is what gave him the title of being the father of Jewish people, because he was able to find God even in that place of where God doesn't seem apparent. And so, yeah.
No, I said don't judge, I didn't mean to like attack you or say.
Oh no,
don't
no,
judge.
yeah, of
I'm
course.
just, I was saying like a general statement, like it's not good to judge people, especially if they're mentally ill.
No, it's an important point. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is kind of a full picture of our relationship with God, but also our interaction with the world, right? And they each give us something different, but we can hold on to. And as we've discussed over the past few weeks, I think each one has its value and speaks to us in different ways. Whether it's the innovative love of Abraham and just embracing everything and seeing goodness and spreading that goodness, whether it's the disciplined focus of Isaac or the faith of Jacob, that even in moments of darkness, we can find that. And the truth is, yeah.
So in morning, afternoon, and evening, it's all Amidah, so why is it the same thing every time?
Why the same text of prayer each time?
Yeah,
Good question.
I mean, obviously morning has a lot more,
I mean, that's the same.
evening and middle, and
So did I notice that? Did I misread it? But you step forward 3 times in the morning. But I was looking at the afternoon prayer, which I don't usually do in my book, and I think it said step back 3. Is that correct?
Well, all of them, you step back 3 and forward 3.
Okay, maybe
So you
that's
end up in the
just
same
right.
place.
Okay, it's back 3 and then 4. Okay.
Yeah.
and
So
then 2 times in the prayer also.
yes, the idea is symbolically you're like entering God's presence. So
Back first.
we walk backwards because this I'm praying here, so I walk back so I can walk forward.
So you can walk forward. I see.
Yeah. The Amidah is the same, morning, afternoon, evening. I mean, and it's a good question, and there's a lot to say about it, but
Yeah.
the same question I can ask, why is the Amidah the same for me and for you?
Yeah.
We're having different prayers. My prayer and your prayer are going to be different. They should be different. We'll have the same text.
It's very broad and vast, you know,
So-
it covers many different
Exactly.
topics.
And so the same thing is, you can have a different prayer in the morning and the evening, even though the same text of prayer.
Oh, interesting.
Everything's there. The rabbis of the Great Assembly introduced this, 18 blessings, 19 blessings today to encompass everything. And then how you approach the prayer, what you're investing in those words can be very different in the morning and evening. But so the body's the same, the soul is different.
Oh, interesting. That's a very good point.
So this is the what Jacob introduces to us, this idea of being able to celebrate our Judaism, find God even in moments of darkness, because it's that daring leap to belief, and it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you do believe, when you have that faith, then you actually you come to the light, or more importantly, you realize that the darkness itself was also God, right? That even the challenge was meant to be. So not only despite the challenge, you're able to have strength, right? Jacob realized this place he was in, right? It's in the comments that point out, Makom Hazeh, this place I was in, I thought it's a place of darkness. I thought the sun's setting. That same place I realized is a holy place. Not that despite it being dark, I can find some holiness. But Makom Hazeh, the place that I'm in, that I'm feeling oppressed, I'm feeling dark, I sense that itself, I realize there's value in that. And maybe the challenge is going to build me, or maybe it's going to bring me somewhere else, or maybe it's to open opportunities. I don't know why, where, how, but I sense this value here. That is a very famous line from I think from Nachman of Breslov, became a song. That Va'afilu b'hastara, even when God's hidden, I know He's there. Meaning, even the lack of presence is itself a form of presence. Even the challenge itself is in itself. You can find value there, find God there. That's the faith that Jacob embodied that gave him the strength. Yeah.
What other ways can you connect to God other than faith? I mean, there's also nature.
So connect to God. Good question.
To like feel His presence or her presence.
So take human relationships for example and extrapolate that. So human relationship, how do you connect with someone? Well, there's a sense of feeling to someone, emotional feeling with someone.
Right.
But then there's ways to develop that emotional feeling, to nurture it, doing something for them, right? Hanging out with them, talking with them, being vulnerable, sharing yourself with them. So those are all things you do in order to connect. But ultimately, what are you doing? They're all building some emotional relationship. So when we speak to God, emotional relationship, some people, nature talks to them.
Yeah.
But again, nature's bringing me an awareness of God. Prayer, I'm speaking to God. They're all developing the faith. Faith is kind of the emotional relationship itself.
Do you think there's value with speaking out your prayers instead of just thinking about them?
Of course. I think speech is very powerful, more than we realize. When you verbalize something, it
creates an energy.
Creates an energy in the world, but also it affects you much more than just things like right? And think again, human relationships. When you think I love someone, you say I love you. Even forget what you're telling them. For yourself, saying words are very powerful. And we say something, it means a lot more to you. Besides, when you're praying, if you're saying the words, you're focusing much more than just thinking, because our mind's flying everywhere. But actually, I think it makes a much deeper impression when you speak the words and you verbalize them.
Interesting.
When you're alone in the Amidah, and just on that note, other people aren't supposed to hear me, but can you say them out loud if you're alone? Yes.
You're supposed to always verbalize the Amidah in a undertone that you can always hear. You're supposed to hear yourself say the words, and not just silently mouth them. There's two reasons why you shouldn't pray the Amidah aloud. One reason is not to disturb others praying Amidah. So if you're alone, it doesn't count. The other reason is the Shulchan Aruch is concerned that a person may be thinking, I have to say loud for God to hear me, right? So it says you shouldn't pray aloud, because don't think that God's somewhere else that has to hear you. God's right here. But if your own focus, if you focus better praying the words, I'm not saying screaming them, but saying them aloud, it's not coming from a place of I need God to hear me. If that's your best way of praying, then absolutely. Yeah. Helps, for me at least, helps say the words, keeps me grounded. This is where I am.
It's too bad we don't have time to talk about the goat spots, because that gets really weird.
That's a trippy story.
Chronologically, it's very confusing to me. It's
a very confusing story. Also, some companies it's all a dream. It seems like it's a dream that's actually happening. Is he affecting it through kind of like, is he like putting stuff into the water, which is affecting what the animals are seeing during conception, which creates this. Is it a miracle from God? There's a lot of
chronology
confusion.
because he's saying how he's breeding them at the end. But he was just about to leave, and now he's like breeding new ones and with the rods, and they look at the rods, and you're like,
Very
they're both
confusing
they're
story.
both kind of tricking each other. I mean, it's not just Laban who's tricking him. He's tricking them back, I guess you could say, right?
Yes, and then he says, "Change my salary tens of times." That's so. There's even more of the story we don't know about.
Right.
Tens of times. So there's definitely it's a very to really make sense of it, and there's a lot of different ways to read it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's wild
bring it
tangent at
together.
the end of this. If you're saying it's one long story, it's a really weird way to end.
That this parsha is like each step of it. The names of the tribes are incredibly profound and deep, and the tension going between Leah and Rachel, and then Jacob and Lavan. And there's a lot, and every verse. I always feel bad going over this story because every verse, the wording of the verse is telling us so much, right? And then I'm just telling a story, but there's so much depth and detail that is a world of its own, a whole chapter. But it's impossible to do it all on one foot. But I do encourage, and I say this each time, but take this home, first of all. This is a gift.
Thank you.
For you. Bring it back next week for class, but is it yours to keep? And study the Parsha. Each day a few minutes.